Alright, welcome to Xanos Hood and Story Night with me, your host, Rateritan. This is test number 7. Uh, see if we can get these videos up on YouTube. Oh. Now you've seen all the attendees, and it's time to get the show on the road. As it were, that is. Alright, so tonight's story is brought to you in part by dpwr.net for the Denis dates, uruarchives.com for the surface history corresponding to the Denis dates, and the Cavernian Calendar Converter, which was written by Brett Middleton of the Fuzzy Physics Institute for converting between Denis and surface time. Tonight's story is from Myst, the Book of Tiana. As we progressed through the stories of the kings, we saw many changes in the Denis culture. We saw an austere lifestyle that began with King Rinaref, supplanted by greed and avarice that began with King Shomat. We saw devotion to Yavo and a single faith, supplanted by diverse religions and religious beliefs numbering over 2,000, diminishing to just a handful by the end of King Kareth's reign. Because of the writings of a martyred, self-proclaimed prophet named Gish, we saw their belief system being hijacked and steered away from the words and teachings of Yavo. With King Jaron, Kareth's grandfather, we learned about how the classes became more divided than ever before in their history. Yet the more violent factions in Denis decided to follow Yavo more closely, hoping for a peaceful solution to their differing point of view rather than resulting to violence. Gish's writings resulted in a conservative culture within Denis society. A culture that held the Arotanti, the outsiders, with great disdain and contempt. This general attitude among the Denis was another contributing factor in the demise of a once great empire. We looked at the Midis War, which occurred during the early 8th millennium of Denis history. It was a war that was, once again, started by violent factions who were vehemently against contact with the Arotanti. This prejudice, though not held with the same violent emotions, still was felt by the majority of Denis society, a society that was very ethnocentric as well as xenophobic. These feelings and opinions remained prevalent up to the fall. We also learned about the origins of Yisha's journey ages, who created them, and why. We learned about Agaris, the architect of the fall. His motives were not ethnocentric, nor did they stem from xenophobia. He was driven strictly by revenge. Revenge for being wrongly accused and convicted of a crime he did not commit. Revenge that drove him to commit genocide against his own people, a character flaw that would spell the end of an empire. Also, there were the beginnings of Atris, one of the heroes of the fall, the excavation of the great shaft, and of a friendship with Viovis, who would become one of the villains of the fall. Last time, we learned about a surface dweller named Anna, her life, and how she came to find the cavern, and those same old Denis fears. Tonight, we will look at a cunning savage, and the first step into a dark abyss. In the Denis year of 9368, approximately 1712 AD on the surface, about 9 years after Sir Isaac Newton became chairman of the Royal Society, Anna found the hidden Denis Empire, and was promptly captured and arrested. She was taken to a prison cell in the cavern of Irat, which was off the main cavern, away from the general population. It was a place reserved for dangerous criminals. There she waited, for what she knew not. With a lack of information coming from the council, Rumors spread throughout the lower city like wildfire. The thought on everyone's mind was, what manner of creature was this surface dweller? Most agreed that it was humanoid. Some claimed that it was a cross between a bear and an ape. Others were even more wild. One story had it that a whole tribe of heavily armed savages had come down through the tunnels trying to force their way into Denis, and it took a whole garrison of maintainers, backed up by the city guard, to fight them off. Even Atrus, as level-headed as he was, found it difficult not to get caught up in the guessing games. As a result, he went to his friend Veovis, who, by virtue of his station, was sure to know more than the rest of the Denis citizenry. Atrus met with Veovis, who was already meeting with Leannis, his tutor and chief advisor, and his friend Suanur. They began to discuss the prisoner, with Suanur and Veovis saying some rather unkind descriptions of her, showing their prejudice against the Arotanti. The meeting ended with a warning from Veovis that nothing but trouble can come of this, Atrus. I warrant you, nothing but trouble. A foreboding of evil if there ever was one. The High Council decreed that the Guild of Linguists should work with Anna, to discern her language, determine the meanings, if any, from her apparent grunts and groans. After accomplishing this, she was to stand trial, with a member of the guild acting as her advocate and interpreter. To this end, Guildmaster Hammis was commissioned to work with her. Much to his astonishment, she pointed to various objects and was apparently asking for their Denis names. Within about 8 weeks, she was speaking in Denis, though at a child's level. After 20 weeks, she was almost fluent. Master Hammis had mentioned the Rehev Court to her, the book of the Denis lexicon, which means literally the word book. To his amazement, she asked him for a copy of it. It was forbidden for Arotanti to look at the book. Still, he found himself liking this little slip of a girl. It was more important to him that she like him than any trouble he might get into by giving her a copy of the book. So, bending the rules, he proceeded to procure a copy for her. Part of her argument for reading it was that so she could better represent herself to the council, in spite of the fact that Hammis had already offered to be her advocate. This only increased his admiration for her. That evening, she was given a surprise visit by none other than Lord Aeneas himself, the leader of the 5 lords. His visit was brief and silent. As he turned to go, she asked if she could draw him in order to pass the time away. This surprised him. What surprised him even more was, after she had been given her charcoals and a sketch pad, that she had captured his likeness. She wanted to sketch him so that she might be able to discover the type of man he was. Her mother had always said that the secrets of a man's mind were revealed in the features of his face. If she could but draw his face, she, perhaps, could understand the man. For his part, Aeneas had thought that this matter would be straightforward. Her hearing would be a mere formality, and then she would be dispensed, humanely, to a prison age, and in time, forgotten. Unfortunately, things had changed. This sketch he held before him, the one she had made of him, spoke of intelligence. That, coupled with her quick grasp of their language, indicated that the girl was no mere savage. The question then became, is she typical of the other surface dwellers? The five lords had promised an open hearing for the intruder before the entire council. Now with this new information, the five thought that it might be best if the hearing were held behind closed doors. That way, if it was determined that the surface dwellers, as a whole, presented a threat to Denis, the girl could be disposed of quietly, with no one the wiser. They enlisted the help of Aeolus to sound out the other members of the council to see if they would be amenable to that. Aeolus in turn enlisted Atreus' help, who turned to his father Callas for advice, who in turn went to Lord Aeneas to persuade him to remember that he had promised an open hearing, and that a promise is a promise. When Aeolus learned that the five decided against a preliminary closed-door meeting, his anger started to burn. He thought the five to be making a huge mistake in letting the girl speak before the full council. He was sure that they would rue the day. After learning that the girl was now fluent in Denis, Aeolus was convinced that she was not only a savage, but a cunning one at that, beguiling Master Hamus into letting her obtain and read a copy of the Rehevkor, making her all the more dangerous. He feared that her words would poison many ears, convincing them to take action that they would normally shun. She was a savage, with cunning in place of any morality. He decided, at Atreus' suggestion, to debate this Arotan, providing facts and truth against her words of trickery. After asking Atreus for his help, Atreus promised to speak the truth as he saw it. Satisfied, Aeolus thanked his friend, telling him that he was the very best of friends. The fact that Aeolus allowed his emotions to get so carried away was, in my opinion, that first step into the dark abyss that would eventually lead to the demise of Denis. Please join us next week as we see a trial end in a quandary. The end.